Right, well, thank you very much for coming, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tommy Reynolds. I'm a portrait wedding photographer and photographic educator based here in South East. And my co-host Graham, you can tell us.
I'm a family and newborn photographer, but I also have just started a company in the last year doing fitness photography. And obviously, my lovely photography club are joining us this evening. But yeah, and so this evening we're going to take turns, one and the other, doing headshot photography. Very simple setups, maybe a couple of one light setups, and then adding on top of that.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of start with the fundamentals, and then Graham's going to progress into the more creative side of things. Tonight's event is also sponsored by Evoto AI. For those of you that don't know what Evoto is, it's a really powerful high-end retouching program, which Graham and I are both going to demonstrate once we've taken our pictures. So I'm going to start off, and then Graham's going to move to a more, as he said, be a bit more creative with headshots. Now, obviously, with headshot photography, this is something that all us photographers will be asked to do at some point. Whether you're a wedding photographer, you will be asked at some point to take a headshot. So it's really great practice and skill to have this in the back of your mind so that you know how to approach it. And we can't always rely on natural light, especially in this country.
Yeah, exactly, not being in the UK. And the nice scary thing is we're doing Voto tethered tonight, which up until like 5 minutes, like when we were setting up, I have never used before. I've used the Voto. I love a Voto for all my photography work, but I've never used it tethered. So this is literally going to be live, like go a bit crazy. So hopefully Tommy's going to teach me how to do tethered Evoto live. And also, some of the setups are setups that we do on a daily basis. But again, we didn't really have time to practice this evening to other things. So
What better way than to show it in fly?
mistakes, and this is the whole thing: is we're gonna come across problems, which that's kind of the job as a photographer, especially when you're photographing people, is actually problem solving, finding out where the light's going from, where you want to change it, and stuff like that. So we're also going to be showing you problems that we sometimes face when it comes to lighting our subjects and how we overcome them as well.
Yeah, well, we can't do this alone, so we've got the wonderful Alicia to help us out tonight as well. Alicia, if we want to find you on Instagram, is it alicia.modeling_x? The links should be in the description. So for those of you watching at home, please do also chat and give us comments. We'll be monitoring the comments throughout. So if there is any comments about any of the setups that you are seeing tonight here, then please do let us know and we'll be able to answer them as well. I'm going to kick things off. I'm going to start with the fundamentals. Now, as I did say, at some point you are inevitably going to be asked to shoot a headshot. So what are the kind of fundamentals you're going to start with? So more traditional headshot. I know Graham's going to change his modifiers slightly, but I tend to go for, let's start with the modifier. So the modifier of choice that I like to use is a 150 centimeter softbox. It can be this is a more subtle one, it can be an octabox. But 150 is generally the size that I like to go for. The bigger the light source, then the softer the light you're going to see. We're going to use this as well as a few other little bits to really help make it feel a bit more high key and very soft and very more of a beauty light. This is something that you can use not just for actors, but also for corporate headshots as well. So that's as far as that. Graham, can I ask you to?
Yeah, and also these are nice and easy flexible, so they're very mobile. You do mobile portraits really.
So if you needed to, this can be, you could take this in the train because it collapses really small. It's not something like in the olden days with older modifiers where you'd have to use the rod system. So putting each 16 rods in individually, you can collapse this like a umbrella. So that's been mounted there. We've got a City 600 Pro. It's battery powered, which is really great. It's one of my favorite strobes, especially in a studio environment like this. Where I'm just going to oh,
The width now, for
it's double that Anton deck today. Okay, so that's as far as the modifier. If I've got time, I'm going to briefly put a different modifier in just so we can compare the two in terms of the size of the modifier. So this is 150. In terms of the lens, so focal length wise, I generally go between 70 and 100 mil. I think that's a nice sweet spot when you are shooting with headshots. At the moment, I've got here a 70 to 200 millimeters, so I'm going to be around the 100 millimeter mark. You can absolutely go to 200 millimeters. I've seen people do that, but I generally like to keep it around 100 millimeter. In terms of the settings, I am at f3.5 ISO 100, 1/60th of a second. Now I could go to f2.8, but we've actually got quite a lot of lighting in here. So by going to 2.8, I'm getting some of the bleed in. So let me take a test shot and I'll show you what I mean by that. So the first and most important image to take is, first of all, I'm going to turn the lights off. So the lights aren't going to fire, because what I want to do is I want to try and get the image as dark as I can. So that way I know that nothing in this room is being affected by the ambient light. Graham, has that TV kind of gone to sleep mode where it's
Yeah, let me just have a quick look. You also got the modeling light on that as well.
cool? So in terms of the position, I really want to aim this so that this is as low as I can, as long as I can get it without it being in my shot. So, boy. All right. Okay, let's get a shot on screen first. So the most important shot of the day is one where it's not firing, because I don't want hardly any ambient light to be coming in. So hopefully this is going to be.
And why don't we want any ambient light coming in?
So the reason we don't want any ambient light coming in is because I want to make sure that the only light that's being affected is coming from my flash. Let me just try that one more time. That's great. So we're not shouldn't see anything. So yeah, okay. So it's pretty dark. So that means that I know that when I start now switching my flash on, so now the only thing that we're really going to see is coming from the flash. This isn't really going to be affecting the ambient. Okay. All right, let's take a test shot here. That's lovely. Hold that one. So. Okay, so in terms of the catch lights, if we look here, if we zoom in, we get a really nice catch light in the eyes there. That's something that I really like to aim for. So it's kind of like the half of it here. We don't see the full thing there, but I like to see kind of the bottom half here in full view. It really kind of gives life to the image when you have that catch light in the eye. There is a danger of going too high and you kind of miss that. So to show you what I mean by that, if I increase this all the way, so it really didn't go up too much, but now let's take the same one again. All right, same again, Alicia. Hold that one tick. Okay, so we can still see a little bit of the catch light, but you see how it got darker as well? So we compare the two, just adds way more life into the image. Now, could I even get that higher? Oh, I'll bring this all the way down. So we have this issue, So the way I'm able to do this is we're using a boom arm, which is how it's able to come over and across. If you didn't have a boom arm, and that would mean that the light stand is directly in front, you could absolutely do that. I've done that where I've almost hugged the light stand where it's just here, if you still want to keep it here. But if you do have the luxury of having a boom arm, then it's great, because then that means that nothing's going to be in my way. So if I took that same shot again, so now the light is much higher. That's the usual one. So we can see we completely lose the, well, there's just no light really hit. It's all coming from above. And we see a little bit of that catch light, but really, in all honesty, when we compare it to that, it's just so much more flattering when you see that. Equally, when it's a bit too low as well, then it doesn't have quite the same effect. So as I say, I like to bring it down. So you can bring it down again for me, Graham. Sorry.
I didn't go to the gym today.
They're a lot heavier than they look. So really, the sweet spot is really as low as it can go without it being in your shot, and then we'll hopefully come back to this one. So now, so that's in terms of the height. So now let's try bringing it away. So we know that's the correct height. So now, Graham, if we bring it towards me,
on the laptop.
So now we're testing the distance. So we know that's the right height. And now if I take the same shot again, so now we've moved it away. Now we can compare. So take a mental note what's on screen and compare it with this one. Same again, Alicia, 1, 2. So you see how it's got a little bit flatter. In fact, if I turn up the power, so because I've moved the light away from Alicia, it's got a little bit darker. So inevitably I have to turn the power up, and to do that, I'm using my trigger here. So at the moment I'm at 1/36th power. I'm going to go to a 1/16th power and take the same again. Look, Alicia. So I've increased the power a little bit too much. Let's go halfway between the two and go again once again. Alicia, 1, 2. Okay. Right, something's gone wrong there. All right, let's try that once more for like 1, 2. Okay. And 1, 2. So we compare that one with the first one that we got there. So we can see how it's a little bit flatter. See how we get the nice highlight and shadow roll off on the cheeks there compared with that last one. It's all just a little bit flat. So that we can see the catch light because it's at the height that we knew was correct. But by bringing it back, we're just kind of, everything's just a little bit more flatter. But if we park it back towards Alicia.
What would you say is the sort of correct distance between the subject's face and the front of the softbox?
A good rule of thumb, Alicia, if you can actually hold your hand out, that's it. So she's almost touching it. So if you can be almost within touching distance, that's going to be a good rule of thumb when you're trying to decide how close your modifier is to your model. It's going to be a good little sweet spot. So we know we want it as low as we can, and we know that we want to have your model almost touching it. It's a good one for Beauty Dish as well. All right, let's get us back to where we were. Okay, Alicia, 1, 2. Okay, that's a bit better. So right now I want to include something else. We're not going to add another light. We're just simply going to add another we're going to add a reflector. It's a 5-in-1 reflector. I'm sure we've all seen them. I think I've had mine for about 19 years. I haven't had this, Graham.
I have no idea. It's sat in my car for so long, and I've probably got about 5, 6 different types.
They
can just start collecting them.
Shapes and sizes, but they're so cheap. And this is going to be a great one. So this is a reflector arm. You could simply have your model hold it, but if you do have the luxury of, I say the luxury, they're not expensive at all. But if you grab a reflector arm, so that you can put it here, and then what we're going to do is a technique called clamshell lighting. Okay, any guesses why you think it's called clamshell? Because we're literally going to be clamming Alicia into this little space here. So whilst we are getting nice light on the face, we are also getting some shadow under here as well, which we can correct using a reflector. Now you could use the second light, but then that incurs another light, another modifier, can get more complicated. So instead we're going to use a reflector. So what's the point of a reflector? So I said about the shadows underneath the jawline there, but so what's going to happen here is the light is going to fall down and bounce into the reflector and then bounce up. So it's going to fill in the light under the chin here without needing a second light, a second strobe, second modifier, just simply using a reflector. So just take a test shot and see how it looks. Okay, Alicia. That's lovely. Same again, 1, 2. So we take a mental note and see the difference. So we have, it does look a little bit bright, so it has increased the exposure. So I do need to compensate and turn down my power ever so slightly. Let's try that again. Let's 1, 2. Okay, there we go. That's looking nice. Alicia, so I've noticed, Alicia, I'm losing a little bit of that catch light. So Alicia, I'm just going to ask you to just lift the chin ever so slightly, just so it has a better chance of hitting that, of seeing the. There we go. Okay, so we compare that to our first one. See a massive difference in seeing the shadows just being lifted under the chin there. Really easy technique. And you can dial in how kind of strong that is by just simply how close it is. So if you did want to make it even more intense, you can just simply raise it because it's closer to Alicia, so it's going to be more intense. If I take another one, same again, Alicia. Lovely. 1, 2, 3. So we see it looks a little bit more intense. And again, if you wanted to decrease that intensity, you would just then simply lower it down. You could use the white side as well. There's the white side, it's 5 in 1, so silver is just one of them. So you could use the white side, which is going to be less specular. So if you wanted that more subtle, then you could absolutely use the white. I'm going to stick with the silver, but just lower it down. And let's try that one more time. Okay. Hold it. 1, 2. Okay. That's looking good. So let's do a little bit of posing. So this is something that a lot of people kind of struggle with is how do we pose? So one thing I do like to do with Alicia, so Alicia's a professional, so she already knows what she's doing. Most of the time, if it's a corporate headshot though, then they don't want to be there. So just to let you know, I hate my photograph being taken. Alicia already knows what to do, but Alicia's going to almost pretend that she doesn't know what she's doing. But so one thing I do like to do is if you angle your shoulders slightly towards me, just slightly. That's it. Maybe if you put one leg down, so you've got more of a balance here, if you can reach. Just about. Okay. And then what Alicia can do is that she can ever so slightly kind of lean forward in. I'm going to straighten you up just a touch. There we go. Hold that there. Let's try that. Okay, let's take a mental note. What we got there and chin up a little touch. That's it. Hold there. Right. Cool. So you see if you compare that with the straight on, it's a little bit more inviting when it's slightly turned and leant in. One thing you could say that I've seen and other photographers do is almost if you imagine that there's a hook at the top of your head and it's connected to the ceiling, and if you were asked to lean forward in, you kind of do this. So rather than lean in like this, you would then slightly lean in like this. Try that, and then chin down a touch. That's it. And then a little bit more front on for me. That's it. And chin down. That's it. Lovely. Great. Really nice. Now, if we wanted to take this even further, let's try and add. It's like a grid, actually, Graham. This one,
I can get grid.
rather than using the strip box, which I was going to use, I think we could just use that while it's in place. So one thing now I want to try and do is I want to add a bit of separation from the background and Alicia. So what we're going to do is they're going to switch this second light on, and Graham's going to grab me a grid for this. I'll show you in a moment what a grid does. But what it's going to do is it's going to hit Alicia and it's going to light up that side of Alicia. If we can't, we can just grab a strip box. Strip box will also work really nicely as well. But while we're doing this, while Graham's doing that, are there any questions at all from the audience? And let me just extra slice. What is that?
No. So if you was working with a model, and like, obviously we're all amateur photographers, what would be a good way of getting them relaxed when you're not relaxed working with models, maybe because
Yes.
you know, what would your tips be?
So typically the session wouldn't start as soon as they walk in the door. Be good to make them a drink, get a good rapport, get to know them, find out a little bit more about them. So you've got some rapport that you can use throughout the shoot. So if you've got the time, you can make the buffer time to get to know them, find a rapport, as I say, and then you've got something to throughout the shoot. What would you say, Graham, on top of that?
Sorry, I missed the question. How to make a model comfortable?
Yeah.
Was that the question? Yeah.
So where we don't, let's say, work with models, maybe we're looking at creating a portfolio, and they always doing like models. You just basically want to get some YouTube, but you're not really sure what you're doing yourself.
Yeah, I think probably one of my tips would be to work with professional models first, like Alicia here, who do it on a personal basis. Because if you're new to the game, taking photographs, and also the model's new, like your friend or something like that. It's very easy to use a friend or a family member to start with, just to get the lighting right and stuff like that. But actually, by hiring a professional model, even if it's just for your portfolio, makes your portfolio look better. Two, they kind of know the poses and everything that work well for their face, their body type, and stuff like that. So by doing that, also they'll be used to it all the time. Whereas if you're just putting someone like a corporate headshot and stuff like that, and that's your first headshot, that's going to be, I would say about 60 to 70% of actually getting a good headshot at that point is actually getting along with the person you're taking a photograph of first.
Lean on the model and then some like
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So lean on them a little bit. And then if once you get more comfortable, like you've got 3 different models, you've got your portfolio together, then using someone that you haven't used before, you're gonna feel more confident. And I think that kind of shows across, doesn't it? In a client compared to a professional model, it shows when you know what you're talking about. And you can put them at ease. And also direction is probably my other tip. Like a lot of people from the photo shoots I've done before have said that he gave me loads of direction. He knew what he gave me the sense he knew what he was talking about. Even though inside I might have been a bit nervous and whatever, but because I gave them loads of direction, I gave them the poses and stuff like that, they felt like they were more comfortable. And they felt like I knew what I was doing. The worst thing is not saying anything. Just sit there. And it's just the silence. It's just like, And probably the other thing is have some music in the background because it makes everyone feel at ease. Music is a great one.
really food, what direction to put them in, and then also I've got black grass telling them what to do at the same time. So it's just like
Yeah, it can be a bit awkward at any stage, I think, really.
It's something that definitely comes with practice. Once you know your equipment inside out and it becomes part of an extension of your arm, then you can worry less about it and worry more about this other thing that's this other hurdle of directing and posing. I mean, it's kind of different with here, but in weddings, I don't pose. I prefer to give people prompts. I think it's a better way of directing people. So depending on what you were specifically thinking, James, what scenario you were thinking, if it weren't a headshot, then if it were like a portrait session or like a family session, then good to give them prompts, give them things to do so that they can be distracted that they're about the cameras, so they can forget the cameras there. Whenever I do whenever I'm doing the couple session, I always start with them walking towards me. Just walk and talk. Everyone can walk, everyone can talk, so that they can at least start to get used to the camera. That's if we're talking about that sort of scenario or family stuff. Headshots it can be a little bit more, okay, this is what we're going to do, because if you know the pose that works well, so I know that's a bit rather so when it's like straight on like this, it's never as good because it's like a rabbit caught in the headlights rather than kind of slightly on, then slightly leant forward in. It's kind of the difference between me talking to someone like this and talking to someone like this.
Yeah.
There's that instant connection because I have my head's down, leaning in. So if you can adapt that with headshots, then I think it'll work really well.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions so far? Yes. Cool. Why is it? You always ask for something that we haven't, like the grid. It happens every single I'm so sorry.
That's me assuming it was there. I feel I wouldn't have asked you to do.
Shame.
Okay, so before we move on to kind of the editing portion of it, I think that, by the way, sorry, Graham, that monitor is just dips.
I don't think it's doing it.
Is it not? Okay, so the last light I want to add. So we've got a little light here. Let me just bring it around. Yeah, it's a little easy. Yeah, it's an 8200 frame. So much smaller than this one. Although don't be kind of put off that we're using this big strobe. Yes, it's expensive, but the reality is there's nothing stopping us from using this up there. So the power, I'm at 164 power, which means very, very little power. 164, so it goes to 132, then 16, then 8, then 4, then 2, then 4 power. So I'm way off of full power with this setup. So you could easily use these. I use these all the time. These are so great. great upgrade from a flash gun is is getting this. So it's equivalent of about 5 flash guns in one in terms of power. This is the AD200 Pro, and they can be modified, and you can use all the same modifiers that are on the market. You've just got this adapter that's already attached to it. Once that's attached, then you can attach any modifier on the market.
I've got 3 of these in my kit.
Yeah.
So these stay, like, 1 always stays in my car, 2 obviously now in the studio,
Mhm.
but this is definitely something that stays in my car all the time. It's good to grab on the go.
They're great at a pinch. I've gone traveling with these and they've been so reliable. So I'm going to put that over here. That's going to be our second light. So the way I'm able to track this, so this I've set that to A. So on my trigger here, I set it so that I tap A and then I can change the power. On here, I'm going to set this to B so that when I tap B, I can control the power independently. So I'm not just dialing both sets of power up without knowing what, so they each have their own power. So I'm going to set this to B, put this in. And then position it here. Now, the reason I've gone with a grid on the front, which is this that black thing you can see. So the point of a grid is that is going to stop the light from spreading out left and right. The reason I want the grid is because I don't want it spilling into my camera here, because it's kind of now coming towards camera, and the last thing I want it to do is spill into the lens and we lose contrast there. That means it's only going to hit Alicia's shoulder and nothing else. So it's a really great tip if you want to control and add mood and contrast, which you're going to see in a moment when Graham shoots. So I'm going to, just to show you, I'm going to turn off this light. So this light's not going to fire, and I'm going to turn on B, and we're going to dial in the power. Now, I haven't got a flash meter on me at the moment, so we're just going to dial it in till it looks good on here. So I'm going to start with a random power, what I think might be right, and only that's going to fire. You can see it's just hitting Alicia's shoulder, just to add a bit of separation. Okay, Alicia, same again for me. 1, 2. Okay, right. Nice and nice, soft, really subtle. I'm going to dial it up a little bit more, just so it's a little bit more obvious for everyone at home in case there's a little exposure and darkness issue. Okay, so now we're starting to see it a little bit more. So now let's combine the two. Now let's turn on A on my trigger. So now we're going to see both fire at the same time. Ready, lovely, as you want. Okay, there we go. So it's really subtle there, but you can just see it just helps add some separation, and it also just brings the hair up a little bit more and adds a bit more shine to it as well. So that combined, we've only used one light, one reflector, and a second light here. If I wanted to, I could get this on the train, albeit I wouldn't be tethered with all of this stuff. But I could, I probably wouldn't use a big seat stand. You can easily use cheaper light stands and still get away with using this equipment here. As I say, this all collapses down to umbrellas, so it's really simple and easy to get in a big kind of in a big bag if you did need to get it onto the train. So I probably need to move on to the next bit, onto the editing bit. So was there any questions about this setup, about the modifiers, about the reflector, about the other light? Was there any questions at all?
I have a question about the aperture choice.
Yes.
You went 3.5, which is slightly bigger than what I would normally go with for a headshot portrait. Was there a reasoning?
Yes, absolutely. So for those at home, in case you didn't quite hear, so the question was why use 3.5 and not maybe go even shallower?
Well, not narrower.
Oh, sorry, narrower. Why not shoot at f8?
Yeah.
I could absolutely have shoot at f8. Really, when aperture is really much a creative choice. So if I'd have shot this at f8, then you would have seen more of the background. Now, it all depends on how you shoot. I like to have a shallower depth of field when I shoot my headshots, but you can absolutely shoot at f8. As we are using a hand-painted background, if I did shoot at f8, then we would see more of that detail if that's something you want to see. What you would just have to bear in mind is when you shoot at f8, you are demanding more power from your lights. Because that iris is going from wide open to much shallower at f8, because that hole is smaller, you need more light to pump through it. So I would need to have bumped this up. Not that it couldn't handle it, But that's just something to bear in mind, is that if you are using flash guns, it may struggle, especially if you're outside, because you need more power to compensate for f8. If you are outside and you're struggling with power, then you may have to shoot at shallow depth of field. It all depends on your personal preference in terms of the aesthetic and what you like. What's your kind of go-to aperture if you have one?
It depends on what I'm shooting, to be honest. Like if I'm shooting family and kids, I tend to use something around about 5.6 because obviously kids move very, very quickly.
Yeah.
When it comes to headshots, I'm roughly about the same as you, but then I'm also using around 100mm lens.
Yeah.
So you got to factor that in as well.
Mhm.
Or if you're using a 50mm lens, I might go, to 5.6 or something like that if it's a corporate style headshot. Whereas, what I'm going to be doing later on, I'm going for the sort of dramatic kind of look, filmic, sort of low key, whereas you've kind of showed high key here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be showing low key. So I'm kind of going for that filmic look. So I'm going to be shooting, I think, 3.2, same as, and I wanted to go lower.
Yeah. As you go.
Yeah. But because we've got video lights in here, we've got a lot of ambient light, we can't because of for that issue. Otherwise, we would have to use an ND filter or something else to lower it. But yeah, pretty roughly the same as you. Sometimes I go slightly higher because of kids. You don't want to miss that focus, which is key.
Okay, cool. I'm going to fire off a couple more. Now I've kind of got all the lights dialed in, just so we can kind of work with Alicia to try and get the frame that I'm happy with, and then we can move on. All right, Alicia. Okay, lovely. And just give me an expression like there isn't 100 people watching and you're not in front of great, nice. And then bringing your hand up for me. That's it. Hold that. Good. That's really nice. Beautiful. Now, when you do with a professional like Alicia, I don't really need to do anything. She's changing every time I take a shot. She's changing it every time for me, and then bringing that hand down again for me.
I'm a bit disappointed you haven't said your favourite word.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Your favourite word when shooting.
My favourite. So forgive me, Alicia. I always say, your keyword is to fidget. Every time you really fidgeting, I usually say to people that I'm not used to being in front of the camera, is every time you hear the click, I want you to fidget. So I like that word fidget rather than move every time. It's like, well, they think, well, move. How do I move? Move what? Doing big movements? Whereas I think if you say fidget, people kind of have an interpretation and know what that word means. So, Alicia, just fidget. There we go. We've got a little smile, little twitching there. That's great. Really, really nice.
Thank you. Happy now.
Great. That's lovely. And pause there for me. That's really nice. And relax. Great. Awesome. Really nice. Happy with those. Okay, so I'll move over to, I'm going to sit down and show you a little bit about Evoto before I move on. So, Graham, if you want to move anything or
Want me to put my mic back on? I'll put it down so.
okay, so we were tethering straight into this software Evoto. This is something that I've loved using for the last couple of years now. Because of Evoto, I rarely actually bring my images into Photoshop anymore. So I'll naturally do my color correcting in Adobe Lightroom. Though you can absolutely do everything though inside of Evoto, because if I show you here, so as well as the amazing retouching tools I'll show you in a moment, you do have what you typically find in Lightroom down the side here, where you can obviously make those basic adjustments. But what's obviously sells and what's amazing about Evoto is the retouching tools that it has as well. So Alicia's already got really great skin anyway, but we'll show you some of the other things that it does have as well. So I'll zoom in here. So freckles are next to it. I'll ramp that up to 100% just so you can see. So you can see it. If I press the space bar, so you can see instantly it's gone straight away. What would have taken ages in Photoshop to do is now taken seconds to do in Evoto. Let's have a look at the there's lip wrinkles and flakes. If I move it up to 100, so again, I'm going to move these in a very obvious way, not necessarily what I would choose, but just so you can see, and for those of you at home can see exactly what effects are happening. So something that I said, neck wrinkles, body blemishes, eye wrinkles, forehead wrinkles, eye bags. Let's just see what a couple of these do. So again, just lifts instantly. It recognizes and knows who's in the frame. So let's say, for example, you had maybe 2 people in the shot. It will know, let's say you had a male and female, it will know who's the male, who's the female, and you can then dial in the controls into the male versus the female, which is really cool. If I wanted to go here, so that's how it knows that Alicia's a female. But if there was a group, then you could go up here, female chain, or then tap male if there were a male, and then you do all of the same controls again, basically for just the male. But it recognised that Alicia was a female, so I didn't need to do that. If I go down to skin retouching, this is a really great one. AI face complexion, this is one I end up using a lot. But because Alicia's got great skin to begin with, it's probably going to see it more in the body complexion. So you see how that just slightly lifted the colour? See in the shadow, so that's actually in the shadow, there'll be a difference in colour slightly. You can see how that's brightened it up and changed the colour as well for me. Done instantly. It's very, very cool. Because of this live stream, you guys here and at home can get a really exclusive discount. I think, Graham, if you go to the guys at home, it's only also your code on the right side.
It's like QR code, yeah.
You're on tap show. That's going to let the people, guys at home.
On the yellow one, yeah.
That's it.
Voter.
Voting one.
There we go. Is it something?
Remind me, it's 15% off of subscriptions.
15% off of annual subscriptions and 20% off 200 credits.
Yeah, so it works on the credit-based system rather than a traditional like a subscription for your Netflix. So it works on a credit-based system. But what's really nice is if you make an adjustment to one image and export it, if you made an adjustment again to the same image, it still counts as one credit. So if you felt that you made a mistake, you can go in and edit that one image as many times as you want, and it still counts as only one credit. So an exclusive for tonight is that you guys can have that exclusive discount rather than just the standard, I think 5 credits that you get as standard.
Something like that.
You get 15 credits with my code, as well as if you did want to buy, then there's an exclusivity there as well. Let's have a look what else it can do. So if we go maybe to the eyes, we can brighten the eyes. Again, we don't want to go too far with this, but it just shows you what it is capable of. The iris flare, so that's going to just enhance what was at the bottom there.
And to go back on that point about re-editing, I have actually had clients in the past actually ask for extra editing done. And I managed to go back into a Voto, do some more editing, and it's actually worked absolutely fine.
I will often make a high res and a low res version. So I do a lot of work with the National Lottery and I use Evoto. In fact, it doesn't even go into Lightroom. So they have AI color correction filters as well. So it's kind of presets built in that's AI driven as well. So when I do work for National Lottery, everything goes through Evoto, nothing touches Lightroom or Photoshop, which is really cool. You could, if you wanted to, you could add in catch lights. So if you did miss it, like I was saying earlier, you could add in a catch light if you really wanted to. They've got different catch lights here that you can add and that you can tweak and move around. So it's not just that, it's not just set, it's done. So one more thing I like to do is there's a hair option. I go to hair. There is so we could see we've got some stray hairs here, for example. So there's a stray hair removal. I'm going to put that to 100%, and we can see instantly before and after that disappears. We can see all the stray hairs down here as well. But how long would that have taken in Photoshop? More time than I would have just been like, But now it's so easy to do. Smooth hair is a great one as well. You can easily go too far with this and look very, very Disney. It's got hair shine enhancement as well.
It's quite good for fine art though. Shine and smoothing. I've used it quite a few times when I've had to do sort of fine art style photographs. Those settings work quite well for that.
And then lastly, we might only see it a smidgen, but it also has a de-wrinkle clothing. So we might only see it here just because of it, because it's a black top. But let's see if we can see it. Don't know if we're gonna. Oh yeah, okay. don't know if we can, if you can guys see that at home, but it's very subtle just because it's a black top, but it's very cool. If you've got like someone in a suit, this is really, really cool. Deblemish and clothing edge. So if it's again a suit, if it's someone's suit, then it will straighten it and kind of remove any of those. So if you can see on my arm here, it would just straighten all of that out, which is really cool. So was there any questions at all about Evoto before I pass it over to Graham for his little bit?
Mention on truth and photography. How will we see what's green from the top of it?
Sorry,
So I'm into my travel photography.
just tell me like a jeans.
Yeah.
How would you how would you see this world fit in with travel photography?
So with travel photography, so is it, do you photograph people while
Yeah,
you
people, buildings, just non-travel stuff. So street photography mainly.
I think it's definitely more aimed at portraiture, but you can absolutely use it for landscapes as well. So there's, if we go to the background adjustments, it's got background enhancements, it's got sky replacements. So you could totally replace the sky with it says no sky protected, so I can't actually show you, but it does have a whole plethora of different skies that you could add in and adjust it. So it's not just a slap on, you can edit the edge transition, you can change the temperature of it so that it matches the environment already in the scene that you've got. Those would be the biggest things. It's got background changer, but again, this is more for in the studio. So let's say that you were doing corporate headshots, and a common thing you might be asked is, well, can you remove the background so that we can add our own background in? This is where you would do it here in the background enhancement. If I go to transparent, and then it would take away, and you can tweak the opacity and the edge adjustment here. So it just kind of creeps it in, and then you can tweak the opacity as well. And then you would then export that, or you could change the background color entirely to any color you want.
Then another question. I've got one photo I remember from when I was in Vietnam. It's one of my favourite photos, but it's a terrible photo. It's a JPEG now. If I was to upload this as a JPEG in a photo, would it still be able to do some magic?
Yeah, it can. It doesn't just. It can accept all sorts of different formats, not just RAWs.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not limited at all if it's a JPEG in any way.
Thank you.
Hmm. Cool, guys. Well, thanks ever so much for listening. I'm going to pass over to Graham. He's going to do the second half and go a little bit more experimental with with his setups.
Yeah.
Let's get
So
into it.
as but you need to change the cameras. So as we sort of mentioned before, Tommy's kind of gone more high key, more what he would be doing as a commercial type photographer, whereas I'm going to be looking at what you can do to be creative whilst doing family shoots or is that it's connected? Cool. Whether you're doing family shoots or something like that, you want to do something creative for families to have rather than sort of the corporate standard headshots. So I really like sort of low-key shots, very filmic. I love watching films, so I try and incorporate that in my lighting setups. So it's kind of on the edge of filmic, fine art sort of style. So at the moment, what I've done whilst Tommy was talking, I've set up my first setup. So what we've got is a big light behind, which is actually one of Tommy's favourite setups, is having the light behind and then getting a nice big white light going forwards. But what I've done is I've actually put in front is this black flag, which is going to block out the light. So the only light that's actually going to be coming around onto Alicia is the light coming around the edge, but I'm still going to get a black backdrop on here. So we tried this earlier. That seemed to be working fine. So my settings on my camera. So I've actually chosen my favorite lens for portraits is the 105 Sigma. It's sort of seen as the bokeh master when it comes to photographs. I'm using that. I'm shooting at 2/50th of a second, aperture 3.2 and 50 ISO, so I can get hardly any ambient light. So to reiterate what Tommy did, I'm going to turn my trigger off, so I'm not shooting any of the lights. And I should be getting a black screen. So this is a good test to make sure the camera's connected. Yeah. So near enough, I'm getting a black screen here. There's still a little bit of ambient light in here. So I'm now going to turn the light on. So this is a really good creative setting if you've just got one light as well. So I'm only using one flash here, but I'm just putting a flag in front of it. It can be card or whatever you want to use. So now I'm going to get Alicia, if you can turn your head towards Tommy for me, because I'm just going to get the edges of her face. So I'm shooting straight into the black, making sure I don't get any of the light. And then I haven't set up the flash or anything yet. I'm not using a light meter. That's actually not too bad. It's not blowing out too much. Just double check. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's not blowing out. So what I like to do, as some of you probably already know, is you can kind of bring up the shadows in post-production, but when it comes to blowing out highlights, you can't get them back. And one of the biggest issues with this kind of setup and the backlighting setup that Tommy likes doing is you can very easily blow out the highlights on your subject. So you've got to be careful by looking at the actual histogram on the back of the camera or the histogram in your tether program if you are tethering and check that. But actually, I don't think I got it far wrong there. So that's pretty good. It's not as black as I was hoping for. So what you can do, put the camera down quickly, is the same reflector Tommy was using earlier. I'm actually going to use it the opposite way around to start with. So that I don't get any of the light, because it could be that some of the light is actually spilling around the sides here and actually bouncing off the walls, bouncing around the room, and actually hitting Alicia's face. Because it's not on my camera, at least. I don't know if you can see this at home or on the screen, but you can kind of see a little bit of detail in there. So what I'm going to do is, unfortunately, I'm going to hot you guys out for a second, and actually put this nice and close in here to stop any reflection at all coming from the light. The key thing here is obviously not to block it in. Actually, I might go a little bit higher. So unfortunately, you guys can't actually see Alicia, but she's still there. Right, and then just looking that way again. Thank you. Brilliant. See that? It's a little bit darker this side now, so we literally just get in the rim light. And the nice thing is with this setup, because I'm using the same, to make things easier for this evening, I'm using the same 150 softbox that Tommy was using earlier on. I'm actually getting a bit of light. I'll take this out of the way for a second. I'm actually getting a little bit of light come over the top. So actually getting a bit of the actual, is that zoomed in a little bit on that? On that screen, Tommy? It's not zoomed in the actual shot.
Might be, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
There we go. Perfect. So actually getting a little bit of light all the way around, because the light is able to come over the top of the black flag or cardboard or whatever you're using to get your black background. I have seen it, you can do it before, where if you have a smaller softbox or a bigger black flag, you can actually go all the way out the top here, so it literally just has it down the sides, like using two strip lights. You're actually only using one light. So that's a really creative way of doing a different headshot. This is really, you see this quite often with families and stuff like that. Do it where they layer them all on top. So it's a very simple way of doing it just with one light. Okay? Now, rather than actually having the reflector using the back side, say for instance, I want to, if I turn Alicia's face slightly a bit more towards me, not too much, sort of towards this door over here. As if I take a photograph now, if I take the reflector out of the way, is I'm not going to get much light on her face, and it's going to give a bit of a weird, what's that like? There you go. So you're getting some slightly different edge light in there around her face, but actually, maybe you just want her eyes to pop a little bit. That's where you can actually use the reflector the other way around. So you can come in here and on purpose do the opposite of what I've just done, actually use this as a bit of a fill. So I can pop this in nice and close. And what's going to happen is some of the spill light coming out of this side is going to bounce into here, bounce into Alicia's face. So this side should be brighter than this side, because this now reflector. So if I get Alicia to look into the reflector, there we go. Thank you. Same setup as earlier, but just with the reflector. Now we're getting that little bit of light splashing onto her face. We can actually see her eyes and stuff like that. And the same thing that kind of brings life to photographs when it comes to portraits and headshots. Same thing that Tommy mentioned about earlier is obviously the reflection in the eyes. Having a little bit of reflection, having something in there just brings people's faces to life. There's something about it. When it's not there, you feel like they've got sort of like dead eyes or pan eyes sort of thing. So actually having that little reflection actually really works there. So, and that brings us on nicely to the next setup, which is very similar to this one, where we're going to be doing short lighting. Does anyone remember what short lighting is? So for those watching at home, this is actually a few members here of actually my photography club, and we have done short and broad lighting before. So does anyone want to explain to me what short lighting is? Do you remember? No? So short and broad lighting. So the next setup is going to be short lighting. So that's where you light the subject from slightly behind, so that the side of the face facing the camera is dark, which is very similar to actually what we've got here. This could be classified as short lighting. Whereas broad lighting is where you light the side closest to the camera. The way we can use these creatively is if you've got someone with a very slim face and you want to make them look slightly wider, broad lighting, lighting them from the front, the side closest to the camera will make their face look bigger. If, for instance, you've got someone who's slightly larger and wants to look thinner in the face, then actually using short lighting, similar to what we've got here, from behind, so the side close to the camera is dark, will actually make the face look slimmer as well. So, but instead of using what we've got at the moment, I'm quickly going to change it around. I don't want to block the camera over here. So I'm going to use the same small, mini, and very cute 35 by 35 little box here. Again, even though it's small, it's still incredibly powerful and very sort of creative. Just like that. You can spend that with me at the gym, I think. Right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this out the way as well. So let's find somewhere where I'm not going to be blocking. Oops.
Is it better over to right there, Mike?
I give the one over there to Mike. Thank you. So he's filled up the space with all his kits. Is that light all right there, Mike? Yeah, cool. So
That's why I went first.
that's the all happen. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to take the trigger because I want the light to come around Alicia's face. So there you go. Feel that. So good position for short lighting. If I get Alicia to face slightly this way again, exactly perfect, as we had before for the other setup. Now, what I tend to do is this edge of the box, I tend to have sort of halfway across the face, but I don't want to face it straight onto her, because it can be quite harsh. I want to feather it a little bit, so it goes this way. Now, the key thing I'm looking for with short lighting is this side of the face is going to be nice and bright. This side of the face is going to be darker. I'm looking just for a little bit of light under her eye and on her eye. So we get, again, having that little bit of reflection so we get a little bit of life in the face. So, and then thick-wise, I generally go somewhere between the eyes and the nose. I think Tommy tends to aim for the eyes. When it comes to the bottom, I aim for somewhere between the nose and the eye. So I'm going to go roughly there. I might need to move it. If it's such a small box, you've got to be a bit more precise. So this is not a setup I would do with little kids, for instance, if they're running around and stuff like that. You'd want to use a lot bigger box or modifier. So I'm just going to do a quick test again. I need to change it turn the big one off and turn the small one on. And let's see, just see what that's like. Let's try that. There we go. Actually, that's not too bad. I think it's probably slightly too far forwards, but you can see here, we kind of got the light underneath her eyes and both eyes are lit. I'd actually say it's slightly too far forwards for me personally. So I'll probably come back just a little bit. Small box, I don't want to move it massive amounts. So you get a massive difference. Small changes make a massive difference. You're doing some real life tethering adjustments.
It was applying a the preset before, so
I was applying the preset you had
I
on.
think it was. So I've just turned it off.
Oh, because you're on the portrait mode.
Yes.
Yeah. On the portrait retouching.
Sorry.
That's all right. Cool. So I think Alicia says that way again. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Brilliant. So come back just that little bit. I don't want too much light coming on the opposite side, on the dark side. So you can see here, it's quite dramatic because it's coming from behind her. The dark side's on this side, and it's making her face look a little bit longer. Okay. This is one of my sort of go-to setups to make images look a bit more dramatic or fine art. It's used a lot in films. Is short lighting. So yeah, pretty much all the time. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back the reflector, and what we're going to do is actually fill in the shadows just on this side, just a little bit. Okay. Cheers, mate. There we go. But rather than what a lot of people would do, is put the reflector right this side, so literally filling in that side straight away, I'm actually using it sort of directionally rather than straight into the dark side. So when we're talking about filling, if people don't know what fill light is basically when we're filling in the dark side of the image. So like the same thing that Tommy was doing with his clamshell, he's using the reflector underneath to fill in the shadows underneath. I'm filling in the shadows on this side, but I don't want it to be all the way around. I still want there to be like a sliver of dark. So what I'm doing is I'm wrapping, continuing the light to wrap around this side of the face by putting the light here. So I should get is a bit more light coming around this side, but I still want this side here to be a little bit darker. Again, let's just have a quick look to see what that looks like. So it's filling in a little bit. I might just wrap it around a little bit more, bring it in. Obviously, as Tommy mentioned, the more you bring it in, the more it's going to fill. The more you bring it back, the less fill you're going to get.
Are your settings still the same, Graham, from the last setup to this setup?
Yep. So I haven't changed any of my settings, mainly one for convenience, but also to add that sort of filmic look. I want there to be, the bottom of the outfit and stuff like that to be slightly out of focus as well, to give that sort of filmic look. Whereas if I was going for a fine art look, where maybe I've got a nice, like for doing a maternity shoot, for instance, I might choose to have my aperture sort of around about f8, something like that, because I want all the detail in the dresses, those big maternity dresses that you can get sort of waved out, that sort of thing. I might go to sort of f8 when it comes to those kind of shots, because I kind of want the detail in the dress, a bit more fine art rather than filming. So, but yeah, all the settings are the same, mainly for convenience. This time he's left me less time. There we go. So I don't know if we can jump from one to t'other. I don't know if you can see it on the screen there. You can tell I don't use Mac.
Just a little attached. Anyway,
Oh, it's press it harder than I was doing. I was being too gentle.
compare it.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it very much at home, but there is a little bit more detail on the cheek on that side compared to that's the first image compared to the latest image. a little bit more. So I might want to bring that, wrap it round, and maybe lower it down a bit.
You can see how really shallow as well that lens is, even though it's 3.2, that can go all the way down to 1.8, but you can see the drop off from Alicia's eyes to the hair that's just there. See how out of focus it is? That's how you have to really nail it. So if Graham had shot at 1.8, it would be really, really shallow.
You'd have no margin for error, which is why I wouldn't use that kind of aperture when working with kids and families, because that tiny sliver of actually being right.
I mean, even at 3.2, the eye back here is slightly out of focus, and that's at 3.2.
Yeah.
So 1.8, that would have been, that would have been much too much depth of field.
There you go.
It's too shallow.
So for one more, just so I can get a bit more fill. Alicia's doing a great job. Alicia's already doing a great job fidgeting. I like that word, fidget. I use it with my customers now. You said it. Yeah,
It works.
there you go. That's a little bit better. That's kind of what I was going for, because I can actually see some detail in the hair as well. So it's small little tiny changes. I didn't move that much, didn't change the angle very much, but actually I'm getting a slightly more detail, more reflection in that hair compared to the first images, where it's kind of just going straight into black. And I can see that on my screen here a lot clearer than the very first image compared to the last one, if you can show that time. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, that one there compared to the fill there.
Yeah, see the cheek detail, the shadow in the cheek here is gone versus here it's opened up just a hair, just a touch.
And another way, I know Tommy does this as well when it comes to maybe fine art sort of style, is rather than actually, for my last setup, rather than using the reflector, I'm actually going to bring in, make sure I don't work in the camera there. I'm going to bring back in the 150. And again, it's going to do the same thing. So again, I'm not putting it right behind me, which is what a lot of people do. I'm not putting it right onto the dark side, because again, I want the light to wrap around. I'm actually putting it in the same direction, same side as my key light at the back there. And all I want to do is have this on a very low power, just as a fill. So put that in roughly there, but I probably want it a little bit lower. And again, I'm not shooting this directly at Alicia, because I'm going to get some hot spots in her face. I'm going to feather it down just in front of her. Sorry, that's right. So to show you the difference, I'm going to turn the backlight off and turn this light back on, but I'm going to lower the power, so it's barely doing anything. So we see there, you can see the direction of it. I'm still getting some dark shadow on the right hand side, but it's barely doing anything. It's just lifting up her face ever so slightly, compared to if I turn my flash off, I turn my trigger off, compared to having no lights at all. So it's barely doing anything. You really do have to push on that, don't you? I'm being so gentle. Right. And now I'm going to turn the backlight on as well, so we get the full picture. So this is useful if you have got the option of having two lights. You have a little bit more creative control. So you can just adjust this fill light as needed. So I don't need to adjust that one at all. And then when I'm happy, brilliant. So I've got a little bit more detail in the hair there as well. Just going to double check the highlights just to be sure. Yeah, I'm all good. So just to show you the difference between the screen and here, it's a little bit different. But you can see there, I'm getting all the detail, nothing blown out and nothing sort of lost in the shadows either because of this fill. So now we have all our things set up. I'm just going to get Alicia to fidget. You can't use that word now, ever. It does work. The other thing, going back to your question before, is also to about how do you make the model feel comfortable and stuff like that. Is also letting them know what you're shooting. Sometimes you might not have a tether screen. The model might not be able to see what you're shooting. So I can say to her, because how much do you know about cameras and lenses now? Probably not much, no. So she has no idea if I put this lens on what I'm shooting. So actually, I'm actually only shooting up to sort of just above your belly button sort of region. So don't worry about your legs too much, but just moving your hands up to your face. I'm mainly concentrating on your face and up here like this, okay? But because obviously the light's up here, try and keep your eyes sort of focused in this sort of direction rather than turning your body all over to here. There we go. There we go. Brilliant, love that one. Bring your hair on the right-hand side around as well. You're right, yeah. Awesome. And then looking slightly a bit more towards the camera. Perfect. There you go. One more, just looking sort of up to about here, looking up. And I'm going to go back a little bit. And then I'm going to come in for a nice little close-up. So it's just head and hand. Brilliant. And looking back towards this direction for me. Thank you. Brilliant. And to show you what might happen if you just let the model do whatever they want without having to give them any slight direction. If you'd actually turn your body to face the audience for me, and actually come this side, your face, I'm going to have to change the eye direction, but I think it will change it. So now the light isn't actually hitting her face at all because it's such a small light it's wrapping around. So you've got to be careful that you give your model some direction of where the light is coming from and which way to face. I don't know if that's becomes useful for you. Yeah, that's good. But yeah, there we go. That's my little setups.
Great. Thanks very much, Graham.
Cool. Would you have any questions at all about any of those setups or?
That's pretty good. I really liked. Black in the background and there's this.
Yeah, people might. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I like the first photo you took straight to back.
You didn't actually have them cover it, but you got the phone now, look.
Give my invoice. Yeah, these first ones. These ones I really like that kind of style.
Yeah,
And they've got
something
some-
like that.
Yeah.
Look, yeah. It's quite tricky sometimes to get that sort of silhouette and have a black background. Sometimes you just what you see more commonly is the whole sort of white
Right.
background, stuff like that. But yeah, one light, black piece of card.
Nice.
Hopefully be able to do it. Yeah.
I would again, no idea.
Yeah.
Fine.
Is there any other questions at all?
I was just going to ask about the color of the background
Yeah.
and how that might affect the light. So if it was a white background, would that reflect more light in the photo and then you have to change your lighting setup?
Yes. So obviously the brighter the backdrop is, depending on the direction of the lights that you've got set up, it's going to reflect light and then come back. That's an excellent question. So it's something to think about. So yeah, it will make a massive difference. One of the actual options, I completely forgot that we mentioned it earlier. When we're just doing a couple of quick test shots for like 5 minutes, I actually had another flash ready because I thought this backdrop was actually a little bit too dark and I wanted maybe to put a little bit more light on the backdrop. So it works both ways. If it's too dark, you're going to lose all the texture. Whereas Tommy's photographs, you had all the texture from the hand painted backdrop. I didn't because the way my lights are positioned. So you might need a third light just to light up the background. But yeah, you're just a good question. If it's too bright, you're going to get a bit more light bouncing back. If it's dark, you might just lose all the detail unless you light it separately. So cool. Anyone else? Good. What's we go on to Avoto? You've got to show me how to use Avoto tethered. Is it exactly the same as normal Avoto? Let me move this light out of the way.
Tethered, where you've So you just connect to a camera. So it's just a little module down here. So that was the basic color adjustment up here, as you would expect to see on any editing program. That module is the retouching one. That was the background adjustment that I said to you, James, about changing the sky. And then if you're shooting tethered, it's this one here, connect to a camera. So if you wanted to, you could take the image remotely. If Graham had it on a tripod, I could tap here and it would take the photo and do that.
So like he's done all the job. And
So I've done the job. Did you want to just show us how you approach photo?
I've never used B22 Studios, but generally what I would do, I don't know if it's very dissimilar to what Tommy would, one of the ones right at the end here, maybe not the one right.
Oh, it's applied.
Is it applied your side?
I think it's yeah, I think it's only applied. So you just
I think that resets all of it as well. So the nice things, actually, talking about presets, one of the nice things I've come across is you can actually save presets. So a bit like what you do in Lightroom and stuff like that, you can actually have them saved. So if you do a very similar image all the time, so if you do that rim light shot all the time, and you've got specific settings that you always use for that shoot, you can actually save it. There are obviously photographers out there who have their own presets and they sell them online and bits and pieces. There's a newborn photographer as well. There are some specific newborn ones. And as Tommy said, it recognised Alicia as a female. It will actually recognise newborns as well and babies. So it actually come up baby rather than actually an adult. And it does bring up more options for them. And I think they're actually working a lot more on a photo for newborn stuff and bits and pieces. Because obviously they've got different blemishes and different marks they have on their faces. So pretty much I would normally just work through this from top to bottom. So freckles and acne, I kind of just add a little bit anyway, just to bring a little bit back.
if you
Oh, is it different? Oh, you just do the bottom.
oh, you could do it there, or you could use two fingers and
And slide, I'd say, yeah. You tell I'm a Windows user, not a Mac user. So we can kind of bring that in and then just adjust that as we need it. So you can see there, it's just taking a few blemishes away. Now I kind of go for a very fine art sort of style. So I'm not going to go through everything that Tommy's went through on here. But one of the things that I do, which might be slightly different to Tommy, is maybe some of the skin retouching and the hair that obviously Tommy mentioned briefly. So I'm just going to jump straight down to that. So obviously you've got the normal body blemishes and neck wrinkles and stuff like that. So down here, you've got dodge and burn, which evens out the skin tone. So there's, especially with dramatic lighting like this, the lighting's not as even as, I say, a high key lighting. So it might be like little ripples in the face, little dents, little marks that really get exaggerated because of using low key lighting and having more dramatic lighting. So I might bring that in a little bit so it evens out the skin tone. I don't know if you can see that very well on the screen up there.
you can use spacebar to go before and after. Down.
Yeah, so you can do spacebar before and after whole image. But if you just want to see what an individual's area does, you can also use the eye. So you can just see what that's. Sometimes, I don't know if you get this as well. Sometimes you pull a slider and you're like, did it do anything? Like, what am I missing? Like, sometimes you're in a daze, from editing for like hours. You're like, did I move that slider? Did it actually do anything? And then, yeah, then you can't really tell because it's spacebar all the time. But this changes the whole image.
It can be very easy to go over the time.
Yeah.
It might be something I sometimes do is I might come back to it the next day and then realise I went a bit too far there, it looks a bit fake, because it can, when you have all of these tools at your disposal, it's very easy to go over the top with it.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
We all are, James. Yeah.
So dodge and burn is one of the key ones that I would use. Texture smoothing, so I can just take some of the texture out of the skin. One of the ones I do like using quite a lot down here in the texture is the matte, satin, and dewy. So I tend to go slightly glossier and adding in some of that texture back as well. I might, for this light image, actually go slightly lower because got quite a lot of reflection on under the right eye on that one. And also, I find these, I don't know if you use them very often, is the unify face complexion option.
These two sliders are probably my two favourite
Yeah.
sliders in Evoto, is this face complexion and the body complexion.
So when you're not working with professional models, like I don't work with professional models very often, that you're just working with everyday people, they're going to have sort of redness in one side compared to the other. It looks uneven and stuff like that. So this AI Unify option is very, very good, and it works so well for newborns as well. Because sometimes with newborns, their skin tone on their legs can be completely different to the skin tone on their face. So this helps even it out a little bit more without having to go into Photoshop and then sort of painting it on manually, or
Yeah.
all the other little tricks that you can do. So these two sliders are quite important. And then again, I'm jumping over some of the stuff that Tommy's done already. I'm going to go straight down to the hair. And Tommy mentioned about the stray hair removal and stuff like that, which has already actually been applied. That probably didn't get reset. But the smooth hair, if you're going for that sort of fine art, sort of filmic look, the smoothing hair option is a great option. Oh yes, back
So
to
that's a little bit more of that example.
yeah. So if I actually turn this on and off,
You see what a huge difference that makes. Just
Yeah.
those little strays, it just really makes it look more fine arty.
oh yeah, and then that shine's a really good option as well. Sometimes again, that's one of the options I find I go over the top on
Hair
quite a
shine.
bit is the hair shine. Yeah, on that. But yeah, so they're the kind of options I would normally go for. Sometimes, very, very often, with slightly older people, but not myself actually, 'cause when you tell, like I have got a bit of a grey beard, you can get obviously adults that have got a few grey hairs going on. Not looking at anyone. I've got jeans. We're matching. You've got the grey hair on top. I've got the grey hair on the bottom. Yeah. So I kind of do play around with the hair color options that kind of evens out the hair option. And also, if you're going for a very fine art look and you've got, say, a maternity dress, the color looks fantastic, but maybe the color of the person's hair isn't quite going with the dress or the outfit, you can slowly tweak it. Obviously, these preset settings are you can use it in a very subtle way. How about blue?
Blue rinse.
Blue rinse, yeah. Yeah, purple, orange,
Yeah.
green option. These are the extreme options, but you can actually use in a very subtle way to try and bring sort of the colour matching, the toning in with the outfit choices and stuff like that. Obviously, if you go too extreme, people will be like, did you do your hair for the photo shoot? Or, you want to try and keep it less is more is generally the key, and then bringing it back. Going too far, then bringing it back. So they're the kind of options that Tommy might not use as often as I do, like for sort of the fine art look and for newborns. I love the brightness in the eyes options. I think that's fantastic, especially if you're in a pinch. Because sometimes you might not have a reflector to add that little bit extra light. You might get the sort of reflection from the actual flash, but the actual bottom of the eye still might look quite dark. So in a pinch, if you haven't got a reflector, the actual light in the eye option is fantastic. Again, you can go over the top with this. I personally bring down the Irish light a little bit and the whites a lot more because I find sometimes you can go over the top with the actual whites of the eye compared to the actual iris. So I've actually bring that down just a little bit. I then bring the whole thing up. Got a little bit OTT on that one, but you can kind of see the difference there as I press that. Just adds a little bit more life to the bottom of the eye there, and in the iris. There we go. So there's a few different options that, Tommy might use that I use that Tommy might not. So
Including green hair.
yeah, it's actually she's been had a green top on. It could be. I feel like I should reset that. But if you stick to sort of the normal, say the browns and stuff like that, it looks a bit more. And you can change the amount underneath, so you can make it a bit more subtle. So if I go back to none, that's the normal sort of hair color. Go full screen. Yeah, next time we're going to use Windows and see if you yeah,
And watch me fumble.
and then we can kind of go to the sort of brown hair color, but just bring it down quite a bit. And you haven't got a darkening option, which just allows some of those highlights to come back through as well. There you go. So it's actually changed it, but it's only very, very subtle. There we go.
Was there any last questions at all? There was a question on the chat about whether this what we're streaming now live will be a replay. Yes, it will, Nathan. You will be able to go back and rewatch this as soon as the stream's done. I know you missed the beginning, so you can absolutely do that. It will stay online. Just my channel, but also on Graham's channel as well. So if you're watching me on Graham's channel, then give me a follow. If you're watching Graham on my channel, then do give Graham a follow. Graham, how can everyone find you?
Yeah, probably the best ones is I've just started a brand new YouTube channel for this year. I've taken a page out of your book, actually started a YouTube channel after I don't know how many years of helping you and doing videos of you. Finally done it, and that's Bewley Creates. Is the easiest one. I'm also Bewley Creates on Instagram, and Graham Beauty Photography is my main sort of business. But we haven't actually mentioned where we are.
No, this is your brand new studio, B22 Studio, based here in Kent.
In Ashford, yeah. So this is our brand new, which is hopefully why we're going to be doing a lot more of these sort of live sessions, and a lot more videos and stuff like that. So yeah, if anyone needs a studio to hire, you're more than welcome to have a chat and use the studio here.
We'll hopefully be doing these a lot more often. But before we sign out, we want to go around the room and just thank a few people here. So first of all, can we thank Alicia for coming along and running for us? Stephen, if you want to pan your camera around towards Mike. So Mike on camera one, thank you so much. And then if you want to do the pan and get Stephen on the other camera, thank you, Stephen. And someone who's been hiding in the back, doing the vision mixing, Cassie, my sister, come on, Cassie, come on.
You can hear a voice from the deep.
Thank you, Liz, for actually being here in studio. Thank you very much for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be doing these more regularly, so it'd be lovely to see you again. For those of you watching at home, there'll be an option for an invite for you to come along in person as well here as well. But for now, we'll sign out and say thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you again. Cheers.
Cheers.